The more you explain, the less they believe you. Sit with that for a second. Think about the last time you justified a decision to someone who didn't ask. The last time you explained your absence, your silence, your choice, and came out of it feeling smaller than when you started. You gave them your reasoning. You were honest, you were open, and somehow, by the end of it, there was more doubt in the room than before you spoke. That is not a coincidence. You were never taught this. None of us were. We were told, by parents, by teachers, by every relationship we watched growing up, that communication is the answer, that if you could just explain yourself clearly enough, people would understand. Fairness would follow logic. Respect would follow transparency. But that is not how people work. That is not how any of this works. Because here is the thing nobody said out loud. When you explain yourself to someone who has already decided about you, you are not giving them information. You are giving them ammunition. Every word you offer becomes something they can pull apart, question, dismiss. You opened the door, and they walked through it with doubt. And the strangest part? You felt it happening. Even as you were speaking, some part of you knew it wasn't working. The words kept coming anyway, because you thought if you just found the right ones, if you just articulated it better, they would finally see you. What if the moment you started justifying yourself, that was the moment you lost? Why you were taught to explain. Here is the wound underneath all of this. You were raised to believe that being understood was the goal, that the right words, delivered with enough honesty and enough patience, would close the gap between what you know about yourself and what others see. And for a while, maybe in the right rooms with the right people, that was even true. But then you grew up, and the rooms changed. You explained your decision to leave a job, and they heard instability. You defended your choice to go quiet for a while, and they heard arrogance. You told the truth about why a relationship ended, and somehow you left the conversation looking like the problem. The honesty that was supposed to build the bridge just gave them something to stand on while they looked down at you. So you blamed them, obviously. They were unfair, they didn't listen. They had already made up their mind before you opened your mouth. And maybe some of that was true. But the harder question, the one that actually matters, is this. What were you hoping explaining would do? Were you trying to transfer information? Or were you trying to control how they saw you? Because those are not the same thing. And which one it was, that tells you everything. Most of the time, if you are being honest, it was the second one. You wanted to manage the image. You wanted to correct the record. You wanted their internal story about you to match the one you carry about yourself, and that is a completely human thing to want. But it is also the thing that costs you more than you know. The man who studied power from a prison cell. Niccolò Machiavelli was a man who understood what it felt like to have everything taken. Not abstractly, literally. In 1513, he was stripped of his government position in Florence, arrested on suspicion of conspiracy, and tortured. He was innocent. It didn't matter. The Medici family had returned to power, and men like Machiavelli, men who had served the Republic loyally for years, were simply inconvenient. He had every reason to write letters of justification, to explain his loyalty, to plead his case to the men who had destroyed his career. He was a diplomat. Words were his entire instrument. If anyone could have argued his way back into favor, it was him. He didn't. Instead, exiled to a small farm outside the city, he sat down and wrote The Prince, one of the most studied documents on human nature and power ever produced. Not a defense of himself, not an explanation of his innocence, a cold, clear-eyed study of how the world actually operates, how perception shapes reality, how the gap between what men intend and what others see is wider than most people will ever admit. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge by the eye rather than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." Most people read that and think it's cynical. It isn't. It's precise. What he was saying is this: people respond to what they observe, not to what you intend. Your reasoning is internal. Your explanation is internal. What they see, your posture, your certainty, your silence, or your scramble, that is what forms the judgment. The words you offer in your defense are almost always less powerful than the energy behind them. That line sat with me for a long time, because it means that the man who explains himself frantically is showing something, regardless of what his words actually say, and the man who holds his ground in silence is also showing something. Both are communicating. The question is only which one is communicating strength. Machiavelli didn't explain himself to the Medici, he understood them, and centuries later we still read his work, while the men who ruined him are footnotes nobody looks up. That is the difference between explaining and understanding. The power you give away every time you speak. When you explain yourself to someone who did not ask, you are doing something that feels like communication, but is actually a transfer of power. Think about what happens mechanically when you justify a decision. You are saying, "Your opinion of this matters enough to me that I will open my inner process and lay it out for your inspection." You may not mean that, but that is what the act communicates, and the person across from you, consciously or not, registers it. This is not manipulation theory. This is basic social signal reading that humans do automatically, the same way they read posture or eye contact. We have been calibrated since childhood to detect confidence and its absence, and one of the clearest signals of its absence is the unsolicited explanation. There was a man I watched do this once, a senior person at a company, smart, capable, genuinely talented, who had made a strategic call that some people questioned, and instead of letting the results speak, he sent a long message to the group, 3 paragraphs, every line designed to demonstrate that he had thought it through, that he had considered all the angles, that he was not in fact reckless. The message did the opposite of what he intended, because nobody had called him reckless, not out loud, but by the time people finished reading his defense, that was all they were thinking about. He handed them the doubt. That is the strange thing about explanation. It doesn't neutralize suspicion, it often plants it. Because the man who is certain doesn't feel the need to build a case. He acts, he waits, he lets what he built become the argument. Certainty doesn't require an audience, but understanding that is only the first layer. What explanation actually signals goes even deeper than confidence, and that is where this starts to get uncomfortable. What your words are actually saying. When you explain yourself, really examine the moment. What is the thing underneath it? It is the need for agreement. Your words say, "Here is my reasoning," but the message beneath the words says, "Please confirm that my reasoning is valid." And that need, that quiet, urgent need for the other person to nod and say, "Yes, I understand, I see you," is what the listener actually receives. People do not process words in isolation. They process the state of the person speaking them, and the state underneath most unsolicited explanations is anxiety, not weakness necessarily, just anxiety. The gap between who you know yourself to be and who you fear they might think you are. The moment someone on the other side of a conversation senses that gap, something shifts, not always consciously, but the dynamic moves. You were trying to close the distance, and you widened it. 2 men leave the same job in the same month. One sends a message to the team, long, honest. He talks about the culture, about the vision he had that went unseen, about the frustration of trying to build something in a place that wasn't ready for it. He wants them to know he isn't leaving because he failed. He wants the record to reflect the truth. The other man sends 4 words. "It's been good, onward." A year later, who does the team still talk about with something close to respect? Who gets called when someone needs a reference, an introduction, a quiet word from someone whose judgment they trust? You already know. You have watched this happen in your own life. You have probably been both men at different points. Most of us have. Stop for a moment. I want you to think about a specific conversation. Not a general one, a real one. The last time you explained yourself when you didn't have to. The last time you sent the long message, or stayed in the argument longer than you should have, or kept talking when the right move was to stop. Feel what that was about, not the surface reason, the thing underneath it. Most people, when they sit with it, find the same thing. They were afraid, not of the other person, of what the silence might mean, of what it might say about them if they just let it be. That fear is real. I am not dismissing it, but it is costing you something you can't fully see yet. Keep going. The trap of needing to be understood. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be understood. That is not the problem. The problem is who you want it from. Nietzsche understood something that most people spend their whole lives avoiding, that the approval of people who have not yet understood themselves cannot give you anything real. You can spend years chasing recognition from a crowd that is moving on instinct, on habit, on what they were told to value. And even if you get it, even if you explain yourself perfectly and they nod and say, "Yes, I see," what have you actually received? The validation of people who weren't looking clearly. The musician who explains why his sound is different before you have heard a single note. The man who over-pitches his business idea to everyone at the table before anyone asked. The person in a relationship who defends their ambition so often, so urgently, that their partner starts to feel less like a companion and more like a judge. In every case, the explanation produces the opposite of its intention. Because what explanation communicates to the people who matter, the perceptive ones, the ones worth impressing, is that you are not yet fully convinced yourself. A man who has done the internal work doesn't need to narrate it. The work shows. Eventually, always, the work shows. And here is the harder truth inside this. The people who most need your explanation are usually the people least equipped to receive it, the ones who have already decided. The ones operating from their own wounds and their own fears. You cannot reach them with words. You can only reach them, if you can reach them at all, by becoming undeniable over time. Stop trying to be understood by people who haven't yet done the work to understand themselves. The man who moves without announcing. There is a kind of man most people have encountered at least once. He doesn't say much, not because he has nothing to think. You can sense that he has done more thinking than most people in the room. He just doesn't feel the need to put it out there. When he speaks, people listen differently, not because he has earned some formal authority, because he has cultivated a particular quality that is almost impossible to fake. He is not performing. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, kept a private journal that he never intended anyone to read. Not speeches, not proclamations. A private record of his inner work, his struggles with anger, with ego, with the temptation to react. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't saying that to his generals. He was saying it to himself. That is the thing worth understanding. The most disciplined man in the ancient world was not performing his discipline for an audience. He was building it alone, in the quiet, in the pages of a book no one was supposed to see. Think about the last time you made real progress at something, the last time you genuinely changed a habit, built a skill, closed a gap between who you were and who you wanted to be. Were you telling people about it as it happened? Or did you go quiet, go inward, come back different? The growth that lasts almost always happens in silence, not because silence is magic, because silence is where you stop spending energy on the performance and put it into the thing itself. The man who narrates his life to the crowd is not living it. He is performing it. And there is something even more specific worth protecting, something that most people never think to guard. What you destroy when you speak too soon. There is something alive in you right now, a direction, a thing you are building toward, a version of yourself that is not yet fully formed, not because you are incomplete, but because you are mid-process. And that thing, that becoming, is more fragile than you think. Not because it is weak, because it is new. Schopenhauer observed something that still holds true today. A great thought, shared too early with the wrong person, is not just misunderstood, it is diminished. Their doubt doesn't just stay with them, it comes back with you. You carry it into the next hour, the next day, the next time you sit down to do the work. Their casual skepticism plants itself somewhere quiet and starts asking questions you didn't have before you opened your mouth. You know the man who announces everything. New year, new business idea, he tells everyone. New gym routine, posted before the first session. New philosophy, new direction, new conviction, broadcast the same day he felt it. And then somehow the thing doesn't quite happen, not because he was incapable, because he spent the energy of the idea on the announcement instead of the execution. The declaration released something that was supposed to power the doing. The man who tells no one, who goes quiet, builds slowly, surfaces changed. That man confuses people. They don't know what happened, they just notice eventually that something is different. Something was built. The evidence is there before the explanation. That is not an accident. That is what protecting your becoming looks like. Protect your becoming. Not everyone deserves a seat in the room where it is happening. Who you actually are. I want to say something directly. You are not a man who has been failing to explain himself well enough. That is not what has been happening. You have been given the wrong instruction, handed a map that doesn't match the territory, and then blamed yourself when you got lost. You were told that openness earns trust, that if you communicated better, the right people would see you. That transparency was always a virtue, and that patience would eventually be rewarded with understanding. Some of that is true in the right rooms, but the rooms most of us actually live in are not always the right ones. And some of the people you have been trying to reach were never going to reach back. Not because you failed, but because where you are going is somewhere they haven't been and can't quite picture. That is not a tragedy, that is direction. The energy you have been putting into justification, into the long messages and the careful explanations and the conversations that left you feeling hollowed out, that energy belongs somewhere else. It belongs to the work, to the becoming, to the slow, quiet building of something real. You are someone who is capable of more than you have been given room to show, and part of what has been holding that back is the habit of asking permission through explanation, of waiting for the verdict before you live the sentence. You do not need everyone to get it. That is not the requirement. The requirement, the only one that matters, is that you become someone whose life is the clearest possible argument for who you are. That work starts in silence. Not the silence of giving up, the silence of a man who has decided, and the decision from here is yours. If this landed somewhere real, drop 2 words in the comments: decade. Silent, no explanation needed. I'll know exactly what it means. If you want to keep thinking like this, the kind of thinking that actually moves something, the subscribe button is there. Not as a favor to me, because you've clearly been looking for this for a while, and it would be a waste to stop now. And next, we go into something that builds directly on this. Why the people closest to you are sometimes the ones most threatened by who you're becoming. Why the people who said they wanted you to succeed get strange when you actually start to. That one cuts deep. Don't miss it.